Welcome to another Smart Driving Cars podcast. Thanks for tuning in. This edition is sponsored by the Smart ETF's Smart Transportation and Technology ETF, symbol MOTO. For more information, head to motoetf.com. I'm Fred Fishkin, along with the Faculty Chair of Autonomous Vehicle Engineering at Princeton University, Alain Kornhauser. Hi again, Alain.
Hey, good afternoon, Fred.
And with us from NVIDIA, Vice President of Automotive, Danny Shapiro. Very happy to see you again, Danny.
Great to see you guys, as always.
Nice having you, Danny. And congratulations on everything.
Yeah, there's a lot to congratulate about. A lot of news from NVIDIA's GTC, GPU Technology Conference to get to. We're going to focus, of course, on the news that pertains to the automotive side for the most part. In his keynote, CEO Jensen Huang said, someday everything that moves will be autonomous, either fully or mostly autonomous. And while that claim seems maybe a little distant, you're doing a lot to speed things along. Give us the overview of some of the big news that you've announced, Danny.
Well, we've had an end-to-end platform. We've talked about that before, from the data center to the vehicle. And it's a continuous cycle of development, training cars, testing them in simulation, and then running them on the roads. At GTC, there were several areas that we made new announcements. The first is the platform, the core platform we call Drive Hyperion. So in our 8th generation that we've now just made available. So it's a full computing architecture for inside the vehicle. It's an AI supercomputer. It does perception, inferencing, it does mapping, it does path planning, and then actually actuates the vehicle. Hyperion 8 now incorporates sensors from Luminar, from Continental, from Hella, Vallejo, and Sony. And so this platform is production ready now and is actually going to go into vehicles for start of production in 2024. So we make this available to the industry to enable others to really accelerate their development and their time to market.
And tell us what that means if an average person is listening to this. What is that going to mean when they go to look at vehicles in 2024? What new capabilities will there be there?
Well, we've announced with Mercedes-Benz that every new Mercedes starting in 2024 then will feature the NVIDIA Drive platform and software that we've developed along with Mercedes-Benz to allow those cars to have highly automated features and in some cases fully autonomous features. The car is software defined, meaning there's a supercomputer in the car. It's running a lot of software, and that software will get better and better over time with each new over-the-air update. Just like your phone gets updates, the cars will get new capabilities. And so there may be additional features, new capabilities of that car that you can buy after the fact that you've purchased it originally that will give you this level of automation.
Yeah, I mean, in some sense, that's kind of a whole change in business practices for Mercedes because, every Mercedes that I've ever bought, you buy it and, that's it. You can't upgrade it. It can't evolve. And of course, that's sort of been good for them because then I traded and buy another one, although I really didn't do that. But, this opportunity to have it improve and is really a game changer for them, right?
I think your new car will be its worst the day you buy it. And you take it home and it will just get better over time as it has more software that's adding new features to the car. And so there may be things that you get for free. There may be some things that you can activate for specific drives. And there may be parts that, there's a subscription model. So you're right, it is a game changer and new business models for the industry.
Sure, and with that new value, fine, charge me for it. It's not that I would expect it for free, but the base is already taken care of, and now let me have a few more, and then a few years later I'll go get another one. But anyway, I think it's wonderful. You sit there with the compute and the sensors. And then the rest is software, right? It's all this stuff that improves over time, right? It gets better and smaller over time, right? It's at least that's what I try to tell my students. This is what you do. I mean, right?
And so in addition to this platform, we announced what we are now calling Drive Chauffeur and Drive Concierge. And so these are basically leveraging this platform the sensors around the car, sensors inside the car to offer these AIs that will drive the car for you or provide services like a concierge would. And so we've basically brought all types of technologies from inside our company together to deliver this concierge experience.
What kind of driving modes do you have?
I have max range, super hush, sport, and super sport. Which would you like?
I don't want to be late. Let's go super sport.
Got it. Super sport it is.
Remind me when my range drops below 100 miles.
Got it. I will tell you when the range has dropped to 100 miles.
Thank you.
It's built on Omniverse Avatar, which is using our graphics and rendering technologies, our conversational AI, our natural language processing, and connections to the cloud for additional information. So you can have a natural conversation with the concierge in your car to control the vehicle, to ask it questions, to make reservations, to get recommendations. All this will be integrated and it will get smarter and smarter over time. We'll learn your preferences and be able to handle a lot of things for you, including parking the car. So you'll be able to get out of the car and the car will go prowl for an open parking spot and park itself, and then it will come back when you summon it.
This
So
is really
if
the
it-
gee whiz stuff I was going to
Yeah.
say, that in terms of the headlines that a lot of people
Right,
focused on.
if I can ask you maybe a difficult question on this, Danny, how do you make this available to the OEMs in general, as opposed to making it, specific and proprietary and so on, product differentiable by, let's say, Mercedes? I mean, how do you handle that one?
Well, it's basically built in to all the cars that we're working with, all the
Right.
car makers that we're working with.
Right.
So they have the NVIDIA platform, and then
Yeah.
this is software layers on top of it that take advantage of the graphics processing for the interfaces in the dash, the AI to do the natural language processing using our Merlin recommendation engines, and Riva, which is our speech technology. And so there's many elements of NVIDIA that are not focused solely on automotive, but the automotive group is able to pull in these technologies to deliver these products and services within the vehicle.
And that's how each individual OEM is now going to basically mix and match and provide their own push or tweak to it to product differentiate themselves on this thing, right?
Exactly. So what we can do is this AI can be trained with different voices, of course. So with 30 minutes of audio, it can learn how to speak with any type of accent or in anyone's voice. We can also then utilize ray traced graphics, so realistic rendering, to bring in any kind of avatar that the brand would like to use, whether it's human form or cartoon form or abstract. And so our customers have the ability to write that application layer on top to customize the experience depending on what they want to do, and could have different looks in different types of vehicles, different modes. Just like you have a sport mode for your steering or a comfort mode, there can be all different types of concierges that are made available to you.
People who have seen now Alexa or Siri or Google in their car that they can talk to, I guess the message is you ain't seen nothing yet.
It's true. I mean, part of this is based on those kinds of experiences that you have, you're talking about in the cloud. Part of the problem, though, is there's often a great latency. You say something, there's a long delay, and especially if you don't have connectivity. If you're talking to Siri and you might not have good cell coverage, you may get a comeback later. So what we're doing is we're bringing this into the car, so it's always on. Right. It's able to do multimodal, because it could be combined with the cameras inside the vehicle. The concierge could know who's talking between the driver and the passenger because it can see whose lips are moving. It can learn to recognize different voices. And then we'll have knowledge about the car. So you can even ask it questions about how much range is left, or where should we stop? Or you can say, I'm really hot. And the car would say, well, do you want me to turn on the air conditioning or roll down the window? And somebody in the back seat could say, roll down my window, and it would know who was talking. It could roll down the right window. So there's there's just so much that the system is going to be able to do based on knowing what's happening with the occupants as well as with the vehicle itself.
Yeah, and I think having it within the vehicle and having it local is really key, because hopefully it's only a few times that you lack the connectivity to the rest of the world, but that latency in those few times just ruin the whole experience. And
Right.
and since you have the compute, you're putting the compute power and the background algorithms in there to do it, then do it locally, and then the latency issue just essentially it disappears, right? I mean, so it's like just like us talking here.
The other thing too is it's going to be really within less than 2 seconds to respond, because first of all, it has to take in the whole sentence. If you were to say, let's go to the bank, you need to understand, well, is that a bank where you get money, or is it the riverbank that you're going to? So it's going to have
context is important. Yeah,
it's going to have context, or it'll come back and ask a clarifying question. Just like a human would.
Yeah, no, and it's important, and that has to be that has to be of low latency. I mean, we know what happened to touch screens when they first came out. The latency in that, what I would do is then I hit it 15 times, and then it would stack all those things. Now it gives me 15 answers. Damn it, no, don't stack those things. It's just, I'm asking the same thing because. No, but the latency issue is a non-trivial one, and you put the power in the vehicle, then you address it. You don't put the power in the vehicle, I guess you're screwed, right?
But then it'll seamlessly connect to the cloud, because you may ask questions that it needs to go get that data, the weather.
Sure.
What's traffic like in Manhattan, whatever it may be, or getting recommendations for other services along your route.
Sure, and of course, it because it knows something about what's coming ahead, because you've given it a destination. The amount of information that's contained in that destination, you know where you are, you know where you're going, where the thing's going. Therefore, it can go ask all these questions that might come up and do that when it can easily put that in there, store it back there, and then and then has it when it comes to your mind. I mean, it can anticipate that. You can put all that anticipation in there. Again, if you have the power within the vehicle. You don't have the power within the vehicle, then
and that's the benefit of this Hyperion announcement. It really it's the computing architecture, it's the sensing architecture, there's high fidelity sensors, it's redundancy, there's failover for safety. And like we said, the system could get better and better over time. So there's 12 cameras on this system, 4 of them being the fisheye for surround. That's 9 radars, 12 ultrasonics, and 1 front-facing LiDAR. So this is the configuration that we're using by default. But of course, our customers, because it's an open system, can make modifications. They can add or subtract sensors. They can use different manufacturers as well. And then all of this is powered by 2 of our Drive Orin processors. So that's our latest and greatest that's in production now. But that'll deliver over 500 TOPS. So it's a massive amount of computing horsepower inside the vehicle.
Question on that, Danny. We know the software can be updated, but if people keep their vehicles, some people keep them 10 years, longer in some instances. Is there any modularity to the hardware that you can take it back to the dealer and plug in a new board, that kind of thing?
So we're developing these modules. So it'll be standard form factor with that Orin processor in our next generation that we've already announced that's due out in about 4 years, called Alain. Will have about 4 times the performance of a single chip. And so those modules will be upgradable. So it ultimately comes down to our customers and their dealers and how they want to manage that. But there's no reason why you don't have to throw out the whole car. You could, in theory, upgrade that computer and have more horsepower.
Great move. Tell us a little more about Omniverse, because that was just made the list of Time's 100 best inventions of the year.
Yeah, it's really exciting. A huge team working on this. As we drive the test vehicles on the roads all over the world, we collect petabytes of data. And to be useful, this data needs to be labeled, needs to be annotated. We have about 3,000 professional labelers creating all this training data. It's an absolute enormous task. And so to help accelerate and improve the efficiency, we also leverage Omniverse and our Drive Sim software to generate synthetic data. This is really a cornerstone of our data strategy. And so with Omniverse, which is a way to create digital twins of anything, including the whole Earth, which was actually one of the announcements that Jensen made, we're going to build a supercomputer that's a digital twin of the Earth. But with Omniverse Replicator, we're able to recreate realistic scenes through simulated cameras with data that's labeled automatically. So this is a great time and cost savings for us and all of our customers. And then we can use that data in conjunction with real world data to train the AI models. And there's usually a couple dozen DNNs, deep neural networks, that are running inside the car to detect everything from other cars to pedestrians to lanes to signs. And all of this needs data to be trained on. So Omniverse Replicator for Drive Sim serves as this synthetic data generator for the autonomous vehicle industry. And so if you think about it, you take a camera lens model and we simulate it to take into account real world phenomena like a motion blur, a rolling shutter in the camera, LED flicker. We work closely with all the sensor manufacturers to make sure we're accurately modeling then the data flow that goes from their real cameras into the computer. So all the sensors, the cameras, the radars, the LiDARs are path traced and leverage what we call RTX technology. This is our ray tracing. And so it can actually bootstrap labeling and creating these neural networks before we've even collected any data. So it's an amazing tool, and it's being used for robotics. It's being used in healthcare. It's being used now in AVs to generate synthetic data.
I think I've got an RTX chip in the computer we're using right now here. Alan?
Yeah, well, that's really it's an elegant way to do all this. I mean, this is I had a graduate student, Chen-Yi Chen, who basically did his PhD dissertation on training on simulated data and training a game. Why? Because if you create the environment in the virtual world, you know where everything is because you created it. It's pre-labeled. It has position vectors, velocity vectors, rotational vectors, acceleration vectors. You can change whether or not it's fog or whatever. And you know precisely where everything is when you create that image. You then can label every one of those because you created it. Now, if you then match it up to the real world, there's something there. Then which is basically what you've taken, and you've taken that and taken it to that. Otherwise, you got to have humans in the loop. Humans are good, but only you are perfect. Only you are perfect. I know I'm not perfect. A lot of people say I'm not even good.
You hit a really good point in that we're able to label data that humans just can't, right?
Just can't.
Velocity, acceleration,
rotational acceleration. That could be important. You want to, something is, is it a paper bag or is it something that's a lead ball? I mean, if it's fluttering, it's not a lead ball. Okay, if that sucker is moving, boom, you better watch out. I mean, those simple kinds of things that you have to put on each object if you're going to do this well, right? Otherwise, once out of every, I don't know, maybe it's only once out of every 1,000 times it's wrong. Boom. I mean, that's not good enough.
Well, we've talked about before, the challenge too is that you just don't have enough data for these really important scenarios of or people running across the street in front of the car, or a tree falling, or bad weather, whatever it may be. And so we can just generate so many permutations of different scenarios with these potentially dangerous scenarios to really train the vehicle to know
especially the dangerous ones, because you can't even reconstruct it. Now, maybe on a movie scene you with stunt people, but how many times you do that? And then people end up getting hurt on. Somebody shoots a gun. Oh my! I mean, whatever. I mean, yeah. Anyway, yes. It's fantastic. And who's better prepared, as we've talked in the past, to do that? You guys have been doing that since day one.
Right. I think
I mean,
Omniverse has so many applications. We could go on for hours and
yeah,
hours about Omniverse and digital twins. It's being used in factories. It's being used for medical procedures and teaching robots there. But the key thing here is how easy it is to use, how scalable it is. Each node in the data center essentially becomes one car for testing on the roads. And so we can drive hundreds of thousands or millions of miles a day in a data center testing this as well. So it's used for training, but then it's also using for testing and validation.
Danny, a key question here, I suppose, and maybe it's a question that's more applicable to the automakers, your customers very often, but how far ahead is the technology from the regulators and government agencies that want to have something to say about all of this in allowing vehicles that can drive themselves to do that?
What we're doing from the hardware platform with redundancy and fail-safe operation to the simulation, it's all about safety. So we're really focused on making sure what goes out on the roads from our customers is as safe as it can possibly be. It's going to be much safer than humans. So we're actually working with the regulators. We want to make sure that we're always abiding by every rule and all the laws that are out there, whether it's in the US or any other country, and that our customers are as well. But we feel that we can utilize simulation to increase the safety of everybody's vehicles out on the road by essentially creating some kind of a driver's test for AVs that they have to pass in the simulator. And so it's much like a 16-year-old going out to get their driver's license and they have to take a driver's test at the DMV. We want these autonomous vehicles to show that they can handle everything. And there's really no way to do that in the real world, but we can do that in simulation. So we're able to test the hardware and software with the sensors is able to perform at a very high level.
Terrific. We'll be back with more, but first, this is a good time to remind you about our sponsor, the Smart ETF's Smart Transportation and Technology ETF, symbol MOTO. To get more info, head to motoetf.com. On the website, look for a white paper. It's called The Smart Transportation Revolution. It's under the Insights and News tab. Some great information there to help you make informed decisions about investing. You probably know that ETFs can be a good way to spread risk with investments, maybe focus on a particular category of stocks. The website again is motoetf.com. We're back with more of Smart Driving Cars and our guest, Danny Shapiro from NVIDIA. Danny, one of the moves NVIDIA has made over the last several months was the acquisition of DeepMap, and that plays into the recent announcements. Tell us about the importance here.
This is really exciting. Mapping is a really critical pillar of driving. You need to have this ground truth, right? And understand where is a drivable space. What are the rules of the road are tied into the map. It's essentially, though, an additional sensor, right? It's giving us information. Earlier in the year, we did acquire DeepMap. It's an amazing team of people who've been focused on autonomous driving and the mapping side of that. So between DeepMap and our existing mapping team, we're scaling out globally. We're doing both survey mapping and fleet mapping. So survey mapping is created by our dedicated mapping vehicles. They're human driven. They have a lot of sensors on them. And we'll have a whole host of these survey vehicles basically mapping the most popular areas in the world. Survey mapping primes the map before our customers' fleets of cars are even launched, and then it'll serve as the ground truth to teach our mapping AI models. Fleet mapping then builds a drivable map through crowdsourced drives. So with each drive, customers that are equipped with the Hyperion platform and sensors are collecting data and building that map. So each drive, more of the route is perceived and reconstructed in 3D. Using our map stream technology, these vehicles can efficiently communicate with the mapping cloud. They're generating maps, they're updating and checking these maps. So it's a really elegant system. It's very efficient. And then to ensure safe operation, the AVs, when they're in AV mode, will use the HD maps for centimeter level localization and ultimately path planning.
And that updating is key here because roads can change, it can close. permanently or temporarily, and all of that, and the reporting back of the vehicles that are out there is key to making everything as accurate as can be. So you have another deal, and you mentioned the company already with Luminar to supply laser sensors for the platform. This is not an acquisition, but it's a
No.
Luminar's getting some big business from you.
Yeah, so we're an open platform, and we support virtually all the LiDAR makers and camera makers and radar companies and tier ones. What we've done is we're bringing in a few select sensors for particular configurations, what we're using on all of our test vehicles, what we're modeling in sim. So Luminar is providing the front-facing LiDAR. We have sensors from Continental, from Hella, from several other providers too. And what that means is that anybody who's using that sensor configuration will be able to leverage the full software stack and all the training and all the DNNs that we have right out of the box. And then customers can use that compute platform, that sensor platform, or some version of that sensor platform, and use the other tools to adapt with new data that they may collect.
You know, we've been hearing every day, it seems, about the supply chain issues that are affecting everything, and chips included. So tell us about the impact there and how NVIDIA has been able to deal with it.
Yeah, we're seeing demand for our products outrun supply. So there's definitely our
That's good. That's good, isn't it? I mean, that's good. Go ahead. Go.
Excuse me. So, you know, in the consumer space, I think this has been really affecting consumers' ability to get their graphics cards, like you've seen. In the automotive space, a lot of the supply chain problems have been on older chips, older process technology. And so with the state-of-the-art that we've been developing, plus with the long forecast we have in advance, we've been able to continually deliver our customers with what they need. But I think it's something that is we need to pay close attention to and make sure we're anticipating demand and be able to properly forecast. And it's going to be around for probably another year, I would think.
Yeah, but what does that look like? I think on the older platforms, I don't know how many various processors they had in a vehicle, but it's in the hundreds or even more than hundreds,
Yeah.
because they had one for the windows and one for maybe I'm not, you know, displaying it right. I mean, what you've done is you've brought all that stuff into one or two central, one in a backup, or I'm not exactly sure exactly how your architecture is on that, but you've centralized all that so that should ease the, I mean, it's fewer parts for them.
Right.
I mean, and therefore, you know, they just have one of these things missing, it holds up the whole damn thing. But, you know,
but the reality is any one part can stop the line, right?
Right.
So,
that's right.
But you're absolutely right. There's dozens and dozens of these chips and ECUs that are really old technology. There's been no innovation. They're not updatable. They're not software driven. They're fixed function chips. And so these new architectures that we're working with companies like Mercedes-Benz, you know,
sure.
Volvo, they're bringing a lot of that functionality into a single ECU with an NVIDIA processor at the core. And these other ECUs essentially become apps. So there's software that determines how, you know, the pattern of the windshield wipers and the frequency. And we can bring AI into that. So the front-facing camera can actually detect rain and activate the windshield wipers. So there's a lot of things that, again, are added features that are just fully software-based. And that will certainly alleviate reliance on a lot of this legacy technology.
Yeah, and you, of course, put in enough redundancy in there so that, you know, it's not one critical thing in the loop that takes everything out and so on and so forth. But it's not this business that they now have, for which, man, who knows how many different ones of these things they have. And it, you know, it's not as if they have 100 of the same thing. And, you know, you can always find one, but they're different. Yes.
you read about cars being built and just waiting, sitting in a lot, waiting for the chips to arrive to put in there in some instances.
Yeah.
So has the pandemic presented many obstacles for NVIDIA beyond this?
Now, NVIDIA has thrived during the pandemic, and part of that is we provide a lot of the core technologies that are being utilized. So if you think about the Omniverse, it's like these virtual worlds and virtual presence. It's increased demand for remote working solutions. And so some of the things that we've innovated, our Omniverse avatar, there are AI tools now for creating virtual presence, 3D worlds, but also speech processing to remove background noise is being done on GPUs, to do green screening and all kinds of broadcast things are done on GPUs. We have technology for fixing eye tracking a lot of times, right? If your camera is someplace else or you're not looking, you're not making eye contact on a Zoom call like this. And so we have AI technology that will adjust the eyes to present the viewers with a vision of that person making eye contact, even if they're looking down. And so
you really, I want some of that. I mean, it's always bothered me. My camera's up here, okay,
Yeah.
and I'm trying to look at you here. Why the hell isn't the camera there? Why no? It would take up a couple pixels, and it would drive me nuts. But now you just do the transformation of the image. You move the pixels around. Oh, I didn't know you had that. That's great.
So it's called Maxine. But the other thing that's really cool is we bring in that conversational AI. So you can talk and it can then play out the back end a different language. So it'll do real-time translation. And then the facial animation is synced up not to the words themselves, but to the sounds. And so you get this avatar that is lip synced correctly with a foreign language even. So there's just so many things. That has nothing to do with automotive. But then again, we've developed we've developed all this technology and we bring that in with Omniverse Avatar into the car. So now we're going to be able to see the concierge leverage a lot of these things that initially were designed for some video conferencing applications.
Yeah, well, you need it in the car to make sure I'm paying attention if I'm the driver. And I don't know when you're going to get to a point where this thing really, you drive it and I'm not paying attention. I'm sure you're going to get there sometime, but I just don't believe we're going to get there anytime really soon. And so you've got to make sure that I'm behaving. Otherwise, you have to scold me or put a dunce cap on me or ask me to bring a note for my mother before I can use it again or something like that. But, this is driving is a serious business, even if you're doing the driving. Okay. And I think all of us are really good drivers, but we really should be there ready to help in case, who knows what, but, and so on. So yes, you have to use all this other stuff with eye contact, eye tracing and so on, and where the person is and whether or not, and maybe, I guess it's in the infrastructure bill, although I'm not sure exactly how they're going to do it, but there's some things in there with respect to whether or not you've had too many, adult beverages, and so because of your behavior and so on, and it goes and pulls the car over. I mean, we've got to. That is something that misbehavior has to be taken out of the vehicle. I mean, that hurts all of us.
I think this bill will do that eventually.
Well, I mean, I think there's a thing in the infrastructure bill for doing that. Everybody's worried about how you implement that and so on, and invasion of privacy and all the other things. But my goodness, you have to be a capable driver, be behind the wheel. Otherwise you're going to hurt me, and I'm not going to like that.
Danny, does the concierge service then have multi-language capability? Is that or is that's up to the automaker?
Absolutely, it will. It's built into the core platform, and then it'll be up to our customers to decide exactly how they want to implement that. But there's no reason why it won't be able to understand and communicate in many languages.
Yeah, I mean that should be a straightforward one, and of course, I mean, what else you want to use this technology for to be able to do that? I mean, are we only going to sell it to Spanish speaking people? Of course not. I mean, you're going to sell it to everybody, right?
Terrific. Alan, in another headline this week, Motional and Lyft say they will launch driverless commercial robo-taxis in Las Vegas in 2023.
Yeah, well, good. I mean, I hope it's good and probably will be good enough, and I hope socially people will be more than happy to go in there and get the mobility of the darn thing. I worry less about the technological piece because Danny's taking care of that. The sociological piece as to whether or not people are really ready to ride in a vehicle in which they're not in control. I mean, we do it in elevators and it's no problem, but we've been accustomed to elevators for many years. I just don't know when we're going to become accustomed to going down the strip. Maybe, I guess.
Everybody behaves there, so there won't be any issues.
I'm sure, and nobody has adult beverages, so I mean, well, they're not driving, so that's fine. Actually, that's where it's really valuable.
Right. On Wall Street, Rivian has gone public.
Yeah. On a down day, on a very down day in the market, at what was it, 86 or something like that? I guess when Amazon owns 20% of you, I guess people are figuring you're going to make it.
And Embark, a self-driving truck startup, has gone public as well. The CEO there, Alex Rodriguez, not the guy who holds the baseball bat, 26 years old.
Yeah. I guess. Yeah, I mean, the market's nice, or was nice until yesterday. It's back today, or who knows? Don't watch it. View. Don't watch it because it is such a bumpy ride. I don't know, whatever.
Well, it has its ups and downs. And speaking of that, SpaceX, another launch.
Hey,
another success.
Yeah, another success. I mean, I don't know why I'm still holding my breath at every launch, but my goodness, I mean, what an accomplishment, really. I mean, I guess there it's easier because in some sense the physics is easier. The F equals ma, although the m varies, so it's not constant ma, constant m then a, but it is tough. But boy, I mean, you have to take your hat off to those folks. I mean, and of course, yesterday, as with I think every launch to the International Space Station, it's an instantaneous launch window, meaning that you can't hold for 15 minutes or whatever because somebody, let's check this. You have to hit that, otherwise you don't have a minimum energy transfer out to the space station. So. And man, they've been hitting it. I mean, I don't know. I don't have my hat on, but I take my hat off to them. I mean, as well as to Danny.
And I think they've got another launch with their.
I think today, right? Yeah,
service,
they're going, and right. And I mean, geez, I think they have a chance of really delivering Wi-Fi to everybody. And talk about scalability. What happens when you have 2 billion customers to your Wi-Fi? I mean, what's that scale look like?
I think Jeff Bezos wants some of that business too, but
he may, but my goodness, he better do a lot to catch up. They've been launching 60 of these things at a go. How many is this?
Right.
Whoa.
And your friend Henry had something more to show off, right? The pop-up metro in Glasgow. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so Henry had pop-up metro number 2 in Glasgow, showing it off. Battery operated.
The battery operated train, a rail server.
Yeah, battery operated. So, if Glasgow is out there, pushing batteries, Henry's pushing his battery operated train. Danny, the first pop-up metro battery operated made the first transcontinental move from England to the port of Baltimore, which then he put it on a truck and brought it to Pennsylvania, and it's running in Pennsylvania. And guess what, Danny? It's orange and black. Excellent. And guess where it's going to be? I mean, we really want to replace the dinky.
Perfect.
You know, I mean, come on, battery operated. I mean, why isn't everybody beating to our path? I mean, well, my goodness. But you know, I think in some places, you know, we have corridors, we have where maybe low tech is fine. Okay, I mean, we aren't going to go put rail lines everywhere to do and compete with what Danny's doing, but in some places, especially the dinky and from Princeton Junction to Princeton, perfect.
Well, I had an electric train in my playroom when I was 6. I mean,
yeah, I
and
mean,
you did
look,
too.
I
You
mean,
got
I
one
got some.
behind you.
I have all mine up on display. I don't have time to put a network together. Maybe I should leave the university and do that. Oh, geez. Here's the call. Oh, you want me? And
Well,
anyway.
Danny, we really want to thank you for coming on with us again, and congratulations on what you and that amazing team at NVIDIA.
Well, thank you. I mean, we're so proud of the engineers that are putting this together, but then also, you know, the industry in the strides to make. You mentioned Embark; they're one of our partners, so it's so great to see them have that milestone. And you know, that the fact that the platform is being used by companies like Mercedes and Volvo, but also at GTC, we talked about how it's being adopted by a lot of other companies like Lotus. WM in China, a really innovative company called QCraft that's doing autonomous minibuses. So every couple of months, you know, we have a slew of new announcements of more and more innovators bringing different types of transportation to market. So it's not just passenger cars too. It's trucking, it's last mile delivery, it's off-road, it's agriculture, it's construction and mining. So it truly is all these things that move will become autonomous.
Yeah, and at least help the people that are in there, if not do it for them. But the first thing it should do is sort of what I've argued is make sure that I look at a trucker, you know, somebody driving an 18-wheeler. I don't see how they do. How do you feed your family doing that? I mean, you know, 10 hours a day sitting there trying to keep that darn thing from crashing. I mean, that's a tough job, and those folks need help. And I think, you know, what you have now can help them. Now, whether or not it's good enough to take that person out of there and have it go all by itself, I don't know. We'll get there. But the value proposition, and I've argued the return on investment to any trucking CEO, just in terms of the safety improvement and the quality of life improvement of their family members. Absolutely. I mean, you know, these truckers are family members of the, you know, if you take JB Hunt or Schneider or any of the big ones or even the small ones, I mean, these folks, they're part of your family, and they work hard making that stuff happen. And if you want to also talk about some of the great contributors to COVID, look, about the only thing we ran out of in the last 18 months was toilet paper. Okay, I mean, think about that. I mean, think of the work that every one of those truck drivers did to move that stuff, so that it somehow either showed up on our front porch or we were able to go to Costco or whatever to buy it. And I think those folks can use the help to make their work life a little bit, you know, saner and easier.
The shortage of drivers is a big part of the supply chain issue.
Of course, there's a shortage of driver. It's a tough job. You know, there's a shortage of every, you know, occupation that's tough. Well, why don't we, Danny, make it Embark, make it easier on these folks? Geez, you don't. That's not a value proposition for a company. You can't make money every day on that, huh?
I think what we see is that driving a big rig in a city is going to be a big challenge, right? And so we're not trying to necessarily solve that right off the bat. But if we can have the trucks driving themselves on the highways, the long distance, and that lets them, the truck drivers, stay close to home and do the local routes, and so they don't have to be away from home for days or weeks at a time.
Yeah, it does that too. But even short of that, even if it's just to assist them, the ROI, the benefits of that, I don't know. I went a couple of years ago looking at what the heck a trucking company spends on liability expenses, something like $20,000 per truck per year. I am certain that what you provide out there right today, without taking the truck driver out of there, probably chops that in half. That's 10 grand sitting there per year on a truck. That's before now the quality of life improvement benefit that you now give to the trucker, so that, the 10 hours a day that poor trucker is in there trying to make this happen. I don't know what, 200 days a year, 250 days a year. I mean, you look at the return on investment, it pays you very well for your hardware, your software, people putting it in there before you take them out. So you start with that, you get everybody on board with that, and then I don't know, that's been kind of my view of the whole darn thing. But anyway, whether or not take them out or not take them out, it's all valuable.
Once again, Danny, thank you so much for taking the time with us. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Great talking to you.
And congratulations on everything, Danny. Wonderful.
Thank you also to our sponsor, the Smart ETF's Smart Transportation and Technology ETF. The ticker symbol for the ETF is MOTO, and more info is available at motoetf.com. You can find us once again at smartdrivingcar.com, also on Anchor FM, Spotify, TuneIn, Apple, Google, Spreaker, wherever you get your podcasts, basically. And you can get your smart speaker to play us too, eventually in that car with the NVIDIA system. You can find my tech reports at techstination.com. I'm Fred Fishkin along with Alain Kornhauser. Thanks for listening or watching, and please stay safe.
Of course, I'd like to also point out that Danny was one of my star students way back in the day. And anyway, so proud of you, Danny. Thank you.